Hello once again. Hello and welcome to the show where I tend to go off on a tangent or two. Talking about the fantasy food. Talking about the fantasy food to ball. Hello again. Welcome back to Fantasy Football, but I'm playing Minecraft also. The best fantasy football show, wherein the host of the show, whilst performing the hosting duties of the show, simultaneously is playing Minecraft. We're going to talk about each of the games that was played this past week, not counting the Thursday night game, which was covered in the prior episode. And so without further ado, I'm going to start with the game that was on my television Sunday afternoon, or Sunday morning in this time zone. So there's a lot of things I really, really like about living in the state of Colorado. The weather is amazing. The people are really cool. The food is decent to really good. I mean, the arts and cultural and intellectual environment is great. However, just one thing about living in Denver that really, really, really bugs me is that I'm forced to watch the Denver Broncos on television every week. This Broncos game is Exhibit A as to why that really, really sucks. This game, I was at the bottom of the screen. It's showing the updates from the other games, and I'm watching touchdowns left and right go on the board in these different games, and I'm watching the only game without one. I mean, if you've ever watched NFL Red Zone, they show you all the touchdowns, but they also show you like drives that are getting exciting and teams that are on the verge of scoring and stuff. This game was probably on that for 30 seconds in the entire first hour and a half of that show, and that's a commercial-free show. So that is 90 minutes of actual airtime. Probably more, I don't know, but 30 seconds of this game. That's how few highlights there were to this game. But I don't have Red Zone, and I didn't have any other service that allowed me to watch other games. So this was my football experience. Broncos and the Jets. This is the kind of week that even the Broncos fans were sitting there wishing they could watch another game. I mean, and the Broncos won, and it was still depressing. I mean, I did this last week when I was doing all the song parodies. I did this, what was it? It was like Raiders and the Browns. Man, I picked the wrong game for that. The first half especially of this Broncos and the Jets game was that song. It was Broncos and the Jets. Broncos and the Jets. The field was very wet. Soon, a game you want to forget. Like a child who is upset. A pile of crippling debt. Broncos and the Jets. Yeah, it was shit. It was one of the worst, football games I've watched in a long time, especially in the first half. At least in the second half, it got slightly more entertaining, but it really was still, I don't know. And so talking about the fantasy implications of this game, that's kind of the worst part, is you didn't really learn anything about either of these teams. So let's get into this. Let's go into the Nether here, and we'll break down these teams. I'm going to start with the Jets. So this was a rough game for the Jets offensively. I mean, the Broncos have a really good defense in the run game, which is what coming into this you think is the Jets' kind of strength. They could not get the offensive line. They couldn't push the Denver defensive line back. Like they couldn't get much. Braylon Allen did more on the ground, looked better on the run game than Breece Hall did overall. Hall certainly was involved in the pass game still, and I'm not worried about him in the sort of fundamental sense of he's gonna fail us in fantasy this year or something like that. But man, he is definitely sharing that backfield right now with Braylon Allen. as the game went on, you saw some of the pattern of like, this is probably a bad idea. Okay, that's an even worse idea. And this is an even worse situation now, isn't it? I gotta go up even higher. Okay, this is not helping, is it? Where is it? Okay, I'm gonna die. Oh, and I'm dead. Okay, well, I told you this would be dangerous, right? Danger is part of life. And in the case of Minecraft, you know, you can take risks and you don't die, you just respawn. So, yeah, those running backs are an interesting situation. Breece Hall's going to be fine, I think, but we're seeing a lot more questions about whether he'll pay off that, you know, that first round top draft pick kind of thing. And yeah, the situation is not ideal, you know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, overall, I'm not super worried about the team. Again, I don't think you learn too much from this game in terms of the overall long-term patterns of things for these teams, but it doesn't mean it's not meaningful. It's still, Braylon Allen, what he was doing is certainly meaningful. I think that another thing we learned here is that the... Okay, you motherfucker. Let's get this done. The receivers are kind of committee-ish. I'm not super worried about Garrett Wilson. I will say, though, that I do think that what we saw with regard to a bunch of different receivers getting work is the norm more than the exception on this team. I think Garrett Wilson had Pat Surtain, and that's why he did particularly bad. But I think in the larger scheme of things, this is not it's not just going to be a narrow target tree. It's going to be a whatever you call a less concentrated. This is probably super dangerous. I'm going to have to come back here with a plan, I think. That's what's going to have to happen. So Mike Williams is the stock-up receiver in this game. I mean, I don't know. Conklin, still legit. Probably someone who's going to have low-end tight end 1 value. So I'm in on Conklin. I'm in, at least in a larger, slightly deeper league, on Alan Lazard. Mike Williams is, I think, the most likely to have upside relative to the other receivers here. We're just going to do a nice little bridge here with no ghasts fireballing us. What else to say about this game and this team? I do think Garrett Wilson is a buy low opportunity, but he is capped by just the style of this offense. So don't overpay. If you're buying low, make sure you're buying actually low. I think Rodgers is actually going to be fantasy playable many weeks. I think they're going to be able to open up the offense a lot more than they did in this game, obviously, and that's, you should not worry again that this game means their offense is crap or something like that. Now, that said, this next week, taking on the Vikings here, that's the kind of matchup, based on what we've seen so far of the Vikings, that we probably want to avoid. So, but again, I wouldn't worry too much. I don't think we learned much from this game. Speaking of not learning much from this game, I think with regard to the Broncos, we learned that their defense is good, or we continued to. Okay, those sounds are freaking me out, man. Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, and Cortland Sutton are players that are on this tier, I think, of like rosterable, but you're not excited about it. You're never excited about like having those guys be the players that you're throwing out there. I think Sutton in particular, though, has we're going to see more from him in the coming weeks. He's gonna start to show value. It might take a little longer, and Bo Nix may still be holding everything back for some time. There's no question that it's not gonna like suddenly click. I don't think for this team. I think they still have a quarterback who is, I don't know what you'd say, he's got a ways to go. But it sounds like the vibes are really good around that team, and that's an important thing to note. Players like him, and they like playing with each other. It seems like the vibes around that team are good. It does feel like they're a well-coached team, so I think they're going to get the most out of the situation they have. And yeah, I think for that reason also, Javonte and potentially McLaughlin are somebody that you want to at least consider putting on your team. Man, those noises, huh? Noises are pretty... What else to say about them? I think they are going to continue to build chemistry as a team. I think Sutton and Bo Nix are going to continue to build chemistry. And so, yeah, I would give them consideration on the waivers. Sutton in particular, if somebody dropped him. They get the Raiders next week, which is a good opportunity for this team to take another step and to try to get another win. So moving on to the next game that I went and watched as a replay, the whole time I was watching that terrible Jets and Broncos game, all I could think about was how I get to watch the Vikings later, my Vikings. The Vikings taking on the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau in Green Bay and coming away with the win after getting out to a huge lead and then letting the Packers back into it. And for a minute there, I was thinking, oh, yeah, this is the Vikings I know, and I was worried they would actually find a way to lose the game. But no, in fact, they are not the Vikings from before. They are the Vikings from now. Aaron Jones is awesome. He runs really hard. He's just really great to watch. Ty Chandler is just an understudy, just what people call a handcuff. He doesn't have standalone value right now, but he is an elite handcuff, in my opinion, absolutely, without question. It's great to see them just be able to move the ball. They look like they look like the offenses that you've seen throughout the league, if you've watched football for years, you see these teams that their passing game it looks relatively easy, but what it really looks like more than anything is it just looks like they have effectively figured out how to get things from point A to point B and make a passing game just work. And it's wonderful to see as a long-term Vikings fan who's very much used to ineptitude or things going wrong. It was just so great to see a team that has it together like this. Their success is boring. Their success in the passing game, specifically, is just, it's routine. I'm going to miss this guy unless I'm going to have to climb down, aren't I? It's okay. I'll take the fall. Oh, well, that'll teach me, won't it? Okay. This is not going so great, but that's okay. What else to say? Jefferson and Addison, the main two receivers on the Vikings, every week startable without question there. No problem starting those guys every single week. Don't go in there. You weren't even supposed to climb over here. That's why I put this portal on a little ice island, was so that the villagers wouldn't climb over. Anyway, probably in retrospect, a stupid series of decisions that I made here. Yeah, you should not be in here, my friend. You should not be in here. Will Reichard, number one. Always number one in my heart, at least. The biggest risk for him as a kicker is that he's an extra points guy. You get these teams every year where you're like, oh, it's a good team, so the kicker's going to be good, right? Yes, usually, but then there's times when your kicker just gets too many extra points, and they have like 4 or 5 fantasy points because they just kicked a crap ton of extra points instead of actual field goals. So that's the biggest risk, I think, to Will Reichard being valuable in fantasy, but I think he is a good every week set and forget kicker one. Oh, and Sam Darnold. How could I forget Sam Darnold? I think he's a valuable fantasy quarterback. He looks poised. The team looks poised. He is brave in the pocket. He takes shots. He's everything you want. And he's actually slightly more mobile than people think. So he's definitely hitting all the marks for a quarterback, I think. And I'm excited for this Vikings team. And I think Sam Darnold is absolutely a decent fantasy quarterback for you. For the rest of the year, I'm just going to jump down. Okay. So yeah, Jordan Love's back. That's the big news. That's the exciting news. And this was a game script where there was tons of playing catch up. So obviously that will inflate your offense's numbers a little bit. But Jordan Love is just a really good passer. I'm excited to have him in fantasy. I think the fact he had a good game here, again, it was slightly inflated by the game script over what he might have on a week where the Packers can just run the ball and control the game. But with that said, I think he's absolutely going to be a top 6 fantasy quarterback this year. I'm in right now on Jordan Love and this Packers team. I hate to say it as a Vikings fan, but I think this Packers team is actually decent, and they'll continue to show that as the season goes on. A great gunslinging type quarterback, but a good kind of gunslinging. I love having him as my starter right now. He doesn't have the rushing upside, but other than that, he's got, I think, everything going for him as a fantasy player. And this team is just in a good position to be a good team this year. They have a good defense, and I think they have a good offense. Jaden Reed is obviously the guy here. Watson got injured, but my understanding is the injury is not expected to be long-term per se, but that he may miss a couple weeks. I don't know. If Watson's out, I think Dontavian Wicks is potentially someone you can roster and throw in there. Wicks is the kind of player who's always been really boom and bust, or at least like he has the potential to have a good game because he has explosive plays, but he doesn't necessarily have he's not necessarily likely to get a lot of targets consistently week in and week out. And Romeo Doubs seems like the possession receiver. I don't know that he's got a ton of value outside of PPR. He certainly seems like he could have some value in PPR, perhaps. I think Jaden Reed's really the guy you want to have. Tucker Kraft seemed to be, I'd have to look at the snap counts and stuff, but he seems to be that he is the tight end one on this team over Musgrave, and that he has tight end one potential in fantasy, at least low-end tight end one potential in fantasy. He's definitely worth a consideration with your waivers. And, in terms of the running game, Jacobs looked okay, I guess. He's still probably reasonably in his prime. I don't know. I'm a little worried that Josh Jacobs is not, he's not going to be as effective as, some of the other players you might have drafted him around or drafted right before him. I think he's going to be okay, but I think he will end up sharing with Emmanuel Wilson sooner rather than later in a meaningful way, like sharing enough touches that it cuts into his value. Whereas in the first couple weeks, I think he had all the lion's share. But I do see some risk there. I would just be aware that that's a distinct possibility. That said, this team, it feels like run heavy game scripts where they get out to a big lead is definitely something that will happen. So you can consider that as another reason to not worry too much about them, Jacobs, and or to prioritize Emmanuel Wilson as a backup with possible standalone value. Any sign of a fortress? All that I want is another fortress. There's one somewhere around here somewhere, but all that I want is to find another fortress. Yeah. All that I want is not to be shot by skeletons. I'm all out of arrows except for one, but all that I want is to not be attacked by that skeleton right there. Okay. Next week, the Packers visit the Rams. So I think that's actually a smash start for the offensive players. Let's move on. The Chargers and the Chiefs. I'll start with the Chargers here, although I know, the Chiefs are probably more on your mind right now. So for the Chargers, I'm not surprised with regard to J.K. Dobbins is going to be fine. This was the game that I expected him to have, which is to say not a particularly good one against this Chiefs defense. He's going to be fine. I think Gus Edwards is still just as droppable. Nothing's really changed in a significant way for any of these guys on the Chargers, that is. We saw, McConkey as the possession guy, and we saw Quentin Johnston. He didn't do much in this game, but we still see him as the touchdown upside guy, I think. So Justin Herbert's probably not fantasy playable, but I think he has what it takes to support these receivers, semi-support them. I'll say, support them at not being completely useless. But I think it's just McConkey and Johnston that you want to look at. What else? Cameron Dicker is still a good kicker. He did miss a 55-yarder in this one, but I think he made another 50-plus. In any case, next week the Chargers are on bye, so you're going to probably be dropping Dicker, or maybe someone else will drop Dicker, and you can pick him up after week 5 for week 6. But yeah, definitely a kicker I like season long. Okay, I got to talk about the Chiefs. This Rashee Rice, we got to start there. That's a bummer. He was just so good for fantasy. Mahomes accidentally kind of rolled up on the knee of Rashee Rice and or hyperextended the knee of Rashee Rice, and it's feared that it's a torn ACL. The news today is that there's, more tests are needed. They're not quite sure the extent of the injury, but either way, I think it's at the minimum an IR stint and, like a 4-week absence. And that, I think, is the absolute minimum we're looking at here. I think it's probably more than that we're really looking at with this injury. In his absence, in Rashee Rice's absence, Kelce is Kelce again. He did everything Kelce-like that you expected Kelce to do earlier in his career, and that once Rashee Rice became a full-time player last year, they just didn't need Kelce in the same way. But they do again now, so that's what we're going to see, I think, going forward. I mean, I don't think this is a one-off thing. I think Travis Kelce is going to continue to be just this guy who gets a crap ton of receiving work and is now one of the elite tight ends again. So yeah, I guess you don't celebrate that, but you take it for what it is and you adapt. That's what fantasy is all about. Whether you're on the winning side of a situation like that or the losing side of a situation, all those who had Rashee Rice as their wide receiver and were so excited about his potential to win them championships or at least win them weeks this season, in any case, in both of these cases, all fantasy is all about just reality is what it is, and now we adapt, right? I do think it's kind of infuriating that this team is 4-0. I mean, they won games. They're like the player in your fantasy league that got like 68 points and still won over someone with 64 points. They're like, what the hell? How are you so? Oh, that was dangerous. That's some serious luck that they've had. Well, I shouldn't say luck, because now if you look at their starters and the injuries and stuff, they haven't had any luck. But to win the games that they could have, that's super dangerous. Let's see here. I'll just go like that. Yeah, they've had a lot of luck, I would say, from the perspective of their record. So just to go through the rest of these players, I do think Xavier Worthy he has better usage. He had better usage, but he has better opportunity. Also, with the Rashee Rice injury, I don't think he's somebody who they kind of try to replace Rice with, although I suppose there is still, a small potential that's the case, in which case this is, Xavier Worthy now becoming an elite fantasy player. I still think he's got a better floor now, perhaps, but he's still going to be a fairly boom and bust kind of player for this team. They say that Carson Steele lost his chance at this backfield when he had the fumble. That's like kind of the narrative that why, he had a few touches at the beginning and then he basically didn't see the field. Although he did see the field a little bit later, like a few plays he played, but it was, considerably later in the game. But in any case, yeah, I don't necessarily I get dropping him, like in a shallow league, I'm definitely dropping him, but I also, people tend to react to 1 week in fantasy football, and I think the real smart way to do it is to wait another week if you can, and then just drop him midweek if he still isn't doing anything. In this case, I think you drop him now in part because I think Kareem Hunt, who they just picked up as a free agent, I think a week before this game or two, he did actually look good as the number one running back, and I think they just have a lot more trust there. He can do more. He's a veteran experience, so I think they are gonna probably just want to go with him the rest of the way until Pacheco's back as the first and second down back. So he's definitely a top waiver ad of the week and somebody who I think is if you just think of it purely in terms of the familiarity and the past experience, I think that they're going to err on the side of we're just going to let this guy do it. And yeah, Carson Steele wasn't someone that came into the season thinking was going to be, a regular multi-down running back kind of player anyway. So I think, I do think that the narrative that he lost his chance at the job is very much accurate enough in this case. What else to say? Yeah, so Pirine looked like Hunt ran well. Pirine looked fine also. I think Hunt's the guy to have in fantasy. Is another receiver going to come in and fill more of the role of Rashee Rice? That's one of the questions. We saw Justin Watson in this game. We saw a bunch of Noah Gray, and he's the other tight end. But I don't know. I frankly, maybe no. Maybe the answer is it's Kelce, like we think it's going to be. And I mean, again, the Chiefs, if nothing else, they have a track record of years and years of having similar teams. So at the very least, we can say, yeah, we know or we suspect that, we have a reason to suspect this. It's not just out of the blue that we're saying we think this is going to happen. We've seen it in years past. We've seen Chiefs teams past, do this kind of stuff in particular ways. And so I think this is just a case where the boring expected outcome is going to be the outcome for the Chiefs. So the Saints next week might finally be a team that, that matches up to these Chiefs well enough to get a win. But they have an extra day because that's a Monday night game. And so I won't bet against the champs. I think they, infuriatingly for those of us who want to see other teams, in the mix, they already got 4 wins, and it's not going to surprise me if they get one more this upcoming week. So moving on, the Commanders and the Cardinals. I went ahead and made it a point to watch this game too, just because I'm so darn excited for this Commanders team. The little song I did last week, that still applies. The Commanders are looking great. Wow. Jaden Daniels, he's got everything going. This team is officially fun now. We can officially just enjoy it. The tempo, they got tempo. I wrote in my notes, it just says, tempo is Bay. And I think that's exactly how I feel about it. McLaurin is a wide receiver number 1 again. In this game, it was Olamide Zaccheaus, who was the other... Oh, cool, that worked out. Who was the other player that got a lot of targets in particular and was kind of the wide receiver 2 de facto. I don't know if that continues, but that was the case in this game. This team is... I could say a lot about Jaden Daniels, but I just kind of zoom out a little bit. I think this team is running an offense that's like the prototypical, the platonic ideal of like a running quarterback offense, where it's a running quarterback, right? But it's a running quarterback who all the short intermediate throws are crisp and on target, and they can throw deep balls and work, the play action and whatever else. They have good running backs, so the read option and everything else that a running quarterback gives you also kind of comes into the mix or becomes part of your potential game plan. It's just, it's great. They're running this great offense. Zach Ertz is definitely the safety valve. He's probably a flourish fantasy play in the sense that I don't know that he's going to have touchdowns. He doesn't seem like he has that he's somebody they look for in the red zone. But with anything, if this team's going to get in the red zone a lot, there's going to be opportunities. So I like Zach Ertz a lot as a floor tight end, which this year, Pitts, Andrews, there's all sorts of tight ends that you'd rather have Zach Ertz than at this point, I think, just because they have some floor for your team. What else to say about that? I don't know. I think this is a system that can actually support 2 running backs, which is cool, and a running quarterback, which is kind of crazy to think about. But we saw Jeremy McNichols come in for Austin Eckler, who was injured this game and was out. And McNichols had a great game, and Brian Robinson had a great game, and their running quarterback, Jaden Daniels, had a great game. So, I think this is a system. Again, talking about this sort of, I don't know that it's prototypical, but I think it is one ideal of a running quarterback kind of offense where your quarterback is a threat on the ground. You have running backs that are threats on the ground and in the air, and it's just working. It's so much fun. Austin Seibert, their kicker, deserves a look. He absolutely does seem to have some value just being on what looks like it's a good team. The risk there again, well, there's 2, I would say, kind of risk factors for him as a kicker. One, of course, being that if he doesn't get 50-plus yarders, that's a big, significant factor for a kicker. And the other being that, this team is stupidly good. Again, another extra point kicker rather than a field goal kicker. But I do think he deserves a look as a fantasy kicker for your team. The Commanders are a team I'm just generally super excited about. I could have easily hit that guy if I looked over at my little notes. Whew. Next week, they face the Browns at home. I think the numbers will be suppressed compared to what we've seen, this week maybe, and what do you call it, the last couple weeks. But yeah, I'm still super excited about this team without question. So I'm not worried about the Cardinals. You might be a little worried. This is a game they're supposed to be against bad defense. It's on paper, this Commanders defense is supposed to be bad, and I think the Commanders defense, because of how good their offense is being now, is going to be better on defense because of that. Not great on defense, but maybe even streamable this week. I'm jumping ahead to the the waiver stuff, which I haven't talked about yet, but yeah, I feel like the Cardinals did not have a great game. That is true. Oops, that's awkward. I'm not worried about them as a team. Kyler is fine, I think. Marvin Harrison's fine. James Conner's still running well, still passing the eye test for me. Michael Wilson is the wide receiver 2 on this team, but probably the number 3 target in the passing game once we get Trey McBride back. So keep that in mind. But he did have he has the much more valuable opportunities compared to Greg Dortch. He gets a good amount of targets. I think a bit like Darnell Mooney on this Falcons team. He is a number 2. Unlike Darnell Mooney, he's going to be a number 3 target because I think McBride's going to have a lot of targets alongside Marvin Harrison. But I do think Wilson has regular value, and that he's absolutely rosterable certainly over Greg Dortch, who may not have much value for you this season, unfortunately, as much fun as it is. Trey Benson is a handcuff type back. He's the understudy to James Conner. He did get some touches late in the game, so it's not like he's Blake Corum or something. He's still a guy who you may want to have, and he's probably a pretty valuable backup player as backup types go. He's probably pretty valuable in that category of player. So I think, I don't know, he's rosterable if you are somebody who rosters backups, is how I would put it. He's up there in terms of backup value. The Cardinals are visiting the 49ers this week, so it might be another tough game for these players to see their ceilings unless they can be effective enough on offense to make it a shootout. Whoa, these guys are freaking, whoa. Okay, yeah, moving on. I watched the 49ers and the Patriots, or at least most of it. It was on TV also, and this was not super fun to watch. I mean, the game wasn't bad. These teams were both interesting to watch for different reasons. Not super interesting, though. The 49ers are just a good team, and they played against a good defense that slowed everything down. So they had, they ended up having pretty good numbers, but in general, like the offense, it was just the whole game was slowed down a little bit. Juwan Jennings' value is real and is there, even with everybody else healthy, which is one thing we saw. I don't think we learned much, or at least like what we learned is just that they are who we think they were, kind of. What else do I want to say about this team? I don't know. Next week they get the Cardinals at home, which we just talked about. I think that's a great start situation for all the 49ers. They should have potential to hit ceiling type of games just because the Cardinals' defense is not exactly a world beater right now. So we're going to move right on. Keep on keeping on, as the kids say. The kids don't say that. Old people say that. We're going to talk about, what the heck, man? There's nothing in this. Not finding any nether fortresses. It's just miles and miles of whatever you call this stuff. The Patriots, their games, I think, are going to be boring affairs where they're not good on offense. They're not really moving the ball. They're definitely going to not start Drake May anytime soon. They're going to keep kind of sacrificing Jacoby Brissett's body week after week behind this terrible offensive line. And they're going to slow games down, and they're going to play good defense, but they're probably still going to be down by a bunch. And that's what we're going to watch. So everybody except for the opponent's defense is going to have suppressed scoring when they come up against this team, I think. You're not mad at me, are you? I got fucking gold armor on, bro. Oh, God, please don't be mad at me. Are you mad at me? I got gold armor on. You don't have to be mad at me. Sorry, that freaked me out. Ramondre Stevenson fumbled for like the 4th game in a row, I guess. Every game this season. Ooh, that's good. We see that. That's good. So this is a good vantage point. At least I can see what's around me better. I'm heading over that way, though, for sure. So Ramondre fumbled, and he sat on the bench for like a drive after that, but they still brought him back in pretty quickly. Like, he's just an important part of that team. They need him too much to like punish him too hard for, making a mistake like a fumble. So he's fine. Who else? Avoid the pass catchers, basically. I guess Hunter Henry's probably still going to have some volume, but even the other tight end, Austin Hooper, is getting involved. So, wait a second. Is that what I think it is? Yeah, baby. That's what that is in the distance. So avoid the pass catchers. Avoid this team in general, except for Ramondre Stevenson, I think. They get the Dolphins at home on Monday, so start the defense. Or start Miami's defense, or both. Except you probably don't play in a 2-defense league. But if you did, you could start these defenses against each other, I bet, and you'd probably win. You'd win against yourself. Okay, moving right along. The Bills and the Ravens, the Sunday night game. Let's talk about this Bills team. Dalton Kincaid finally having a good game, getting the targets that we hoped coming into the season. So good. I mean, stock up there. It's nice. Khalil Shakir is still the wide receiver 1 on this team. I think that he will remain the wide receiver 1 on this team. Keon Coleman did not have a big enough game to get on people's radar from just from the stat line, but the work he had was promising. He had some meaningful targets. He made a couple of mistakes, but I don't think they're going to sit him. I think they're going to keep him on the field, and he's going to continue to get better as the season goes on. So he might be a waiver consideration if you have a little bit of a deeper league, or if somebody dropped him, or if some of the other waiver receivers that I might value more highly, but that I'll talk about in my waiver section of this episode. If some of those guys aren't out there, or if you're not as high on some of them. Keon Coleman is on a good team. He's a big body receiver, and I think he will have the potential to continue getting better for this Bills team, which is still a good team. And speaking of things, I'm not worried about this Bills team based on this game. I don't think this game is points to any issues with this team. They just came up against a really good contender, and they weren't up to the task, which can happen to good teams, and in this case did happen to one, of course. You're not worried about Josh Allen. This is not the ideal score that you got from him, but you're not worried about it at all, I don't think. Same goes for James Cook. You're not worried. It wasn't his fault that this, things didn't really work out for the run game. They just didn't have a run game going, and they were down by so much that they couldn't really get one going. As for the Ravens, so there's a lot I could say. I'll start by just saying, yes, the defense, particularly the run defense, is legit. Because the defense is legit and because their run game is so strong, the Ravens will, I believe, be able to just control games and just be able to kind of do this to teams where you didn't expect them to do it with the Bills, but they're going to be able to win a lot of games this season with the game script of we have a 14-point lead or more, and we're just able to run the ball down the other team's throat for as long as we want to, and at least as long as the game lasts, until the game's over. So that is something I would be, I guess, worried about. That's the risk and the downside with the receivers for the Ravens. I do think that Zay Flowers is a buy low. I think the game script risk is there. It's very real. It's the same. The risk I just described is his game script risk this season. But I think that the upside is there too. I think that he's the number 1 target on this team. He's going to have some. I don't need that there. He's going to have some value, absolutely, without question, for your fantasy team. But yeah, he could still be boom bust. But the person who drafted him might be ready to drop him, or close to that. So I think you do try to trade, someone who you think is, I don't know, maybe it's Chuba Hubbard, for example, if you're concerned. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily be out on Chuba Hubbard, but if you or Jerome Ford's a good example. Somebody who's right now in a role but may not be in the same role in the future. Those kind of situations are good ones to just trade a player away for someone like Zay Flowers, who, yeah, there is some risk there, but I think he's valuable as a wide receiver 3 on your team. The tight ends, on the other hand, now we're in a new biome. Okay. The tight ends, on the other hand, I am absolutely nervous about. This is going to be really hard. I could get easily lost here. I mean, I don't know. They all feel droppable to me, if I'm being completely honest. I suddenly, as much as the Ravens have long been a team famed for having, or at least known for having a good tight end that is a big part of their offense, I don't know anymore. I'm like, maybe you just drop all their tight ends. I'd rather have Zach Ertz or Ty Conklin than any of those guys, at least in like a half or full PPR league. If it's a standard league, sure, maybe you go for the touchdown upside of those guys over a Conklin or a Zach Ertz, but I don't know, man. Conklin and Zach Ertz looking pretty good right now compared to any of the Ravens tight ends. So yeah, as for the running game, that's where the action's at. Obviously, Derrick Henry, I got to apologize because I was doubting Derrick Henry in the first couple of weeks and before the season. Especially after the first week, I thought he looked slow. I thought he was just overdrafted and stuff like that. I was dead wrong. He looks good. He's definitely fulfilling his draft position. And again, this is a team that's going to be able to control games in this manner. So I think that the value remains there. I think there's value in Justice Hill too. I'll say even knowing this situation with the game script, I think I also oversimplified in describing Justice Hill as just the passing game script kind of player. But I think he has value too. This is, we're back to talking about the Commanders. This could be another one of those teams, prototypical, or at least my new idea of like a platonic ideal of a running quarterback team offense where the running back that's next to the quarterback can do a lot of damage, and there's a second running back who's like a pass-catching running back who can also do damage, and that in the passing game as well as in the running game, and it's just a good situation for this team, and particularly for the running backs. The Ravens get the Bengals this coming week, so that we can hope for a shootout, but it might be another game like this for the Ravens where they just get out to a good lead and can run the ball a lot, keep the Bengals passing offense off of the field. I think that may be their goal this game. They don't necessarily want to get in a shootout, and they don't need to get in a shootout just based on how their team is constructed. Moving on, the Monday night game that I watched some of, I would have loved to watch all of it, but it just didn't. I got to make sure I know which way is back. So this way is back home. So I'll put a torch like that. The Seahawks and the Lions. And so I didn't get to watch all this game, but I did watch a portion of it, and just looked over everything after the game to make sure I'd caught up. Wow, if there was a game, that I would have liked to watch all of, it was this one. Very exciting game, exciting outcomes. So starting with the Seahawks, they must have heard my song about Hutchinson and to watch out for Hutchinson, put Gino on the run now. Dun-dun-dun, as the pocket collapses. Dun-dun-dun, gotta get rid of the ball somehow. Dun-dun-dun, I think you slow the game down. Dun-dun-dun, hopefully you have Kenneth Walker. Dun-dun-dun, and be quick to get the ball out. Dun-dun-dun, take what the defense has to offer. At least early on, especially, they were all about the quick passes, getting the ball out quick, trying to beat the rush, and it seemed like that dictated a lot of their game plan this game. In PPR, JSN, in effect, when they need to counteract pressure in general, this is probably going to be a thing where they're just getting out a lot of short passes. In general, this was a game with huge pass volume for this team. Yeah, they're not going to pass this much every week, so take that with a grain of salt. Take like JSN, Tyler Lockett. They both had a bunch of targets. They're not both going to have a ton of targets every week. So, it seems like JSN is more likely to, but, you're either way, you're just kind of taking a chance. Or at least, these are PPR and or, upside flex plays. DK Metcalf is the guy who's he's got the everything about the prototypical wide receiver one. In this game, you could see it at times. You could tell that he wants to be the guy who puts the team on his back when they're losing. And he just has that makeup as a player, and so he's going to be awesome. He's looking like a wide receiver one since Geno in the passing game is starting to put everything together. Geno Smith certainly seems like he's a valuable quarterback, whether as a streamer or as a long-term kind of option. Kenneth Walker had a massive fantasy game, probably won some people their weeks with that coming through on the Monday night, which is always a fun thing to see unless you're the one who loses to a player on a Monday night. His line was inflated, it should be said, by these 3 touchdowns. He didn't actually have that many carries. It seems like he got pretty good yardage. But in general, it wasn't like this team had this... Oops, I crossed my own path here. They get the Giants at home next week. That's probably a very good matchup. So I expect them to come out and show that they're a good-ass team by kicking the other team's butt, which is, generally speaking, one of the best ways to show that you are a good team in the game of football. Moving on to the Lions. This team... I heard that noise. I don't like that noise. This probably is too thin of a path for Hoglins, right? I think that this Lions team is who we thought they were, which is to say, start all of them. They were great. Yeah, and there was an active effort, it felt like, early on at least, to get Sam Laporta more involved. He had a decent fantasy day, which is more than you can say for, most weeks, and so that's a good sign for Sam Laporta. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams are the 2 main receivers. They have creative play calling, like that pass that Amon-Ra passed the ball to Jared Goff. So lots of cool stuff like that. Yeah, there it is. Okay. I just needed to have patience, it seems. All right. So, yeah, this team has all the parts. I didn't mention the running backs, but there was big plays from both running backs in this game. They both had decent to good fantasy games. You probably do have Gibbs as the guy with more upside, but Montgomery's absolutely right there as somebody you want to start every week. Their next week is a bye week. I think it comes too early for this team. I think they're a team that actually would rather... They're rolling, they'd rather have a bye week come later, I think. All right, we're going to proceed here, and I'll try to go a little faster through the games here. Moving on to the Bears and the Rams. Starting with the Bears. Well, did you drop DeAndre Swift? Because if you did, you probably did it too hastily. It's a thing. It happens, If you drop players... Oh, that's actually Stairway. What am I doing? Players get dropped hastily, especially in shallow leagues. I can totally understand the case for dropping Swift. I might have done it in one of my really shallow leagues. I think I did, in fact. This is how fantasy football works. Certain players get dropped early in the season, and it's a mistake. Now, keep in mind that this may be the best game DeAndre Swift has all season. But he proved in this game that he still has some value, absolutely, for this team. And, I think that's what you're basically seeing here is a player who is going to have value. He's not washed, or he's not, finished with his career. Roschon Johnson did seem like he was the number 2 or the other running back to have in this backfield. They gave him, I think, a lot of the goal line work, so that's important to consider. You definitely want to look at Roschon Johnson as somebody who is rosterable, I think. So as we keep exploring here, both of those guys, that is both Swift and Roschon Johnson, they looked good out there. They ran well. If they can keep this up as a team... is that a second room? Fascinating. So the Bears are slowly getting better. That's what I would say. It's still going to be messy. It still is very messy. It's ugly. The miscues are there. Caleb Williams has miscues. The offensive line is crap. They get penalties. The defense is good, but, my point is I think that this is a team that's getting better overall, but it's still messy, and it's still going to be messy. I wanted to say Caleb Williams is someone you can pick up now. I still think he's someone you could consider picking up. Is this the whole extent of the thing, though? Oh, never mind. Why did I think I was done? There's this whole part I haven't gone in yet. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. I think the best way, I was thinking about this when I was taking these notes, the best way to, I think, to describe the situation with this team, the Bears, is that they're Steelers-ish right now, meaning they want the defense to win. They prefer to run a lot, even though they haven't really been super duper able to in the early weeks, but their goal would be, in an ideal world, to just run a lot, have the defense win games, minimize the mistakes of their quarterback, and let the defense be kind of the MVP of the offense, so to speak. I think Cole Kmet is one of these 3 catches for 35 yards kind of players. I don't think that he has a ton of value, but I don't think, the 3 for 35 yards player in the context of fantasy, maybe it means a floor, and there is some upside, there is some ceiling for this player, and for a player like him who's in an offense that at least, he's a red zone target to an extent. So, yeah, Kmet if you wanna, I suppose, is the answer there. So yeah, DJ Moore is probably going to have some trouble returning his value or his draft position. I think he's an okay wide receiver 2/3. I'm not like thinking he's just bad or anything like that. He's definitely going to be the lead target getter on this team. I don't think that's going to change at any point. Keenan Allen probably wasn't 100% health-wise in this game, so you can take maybe with a grain of salt. That's okay. That's not bad. That's a good thing, but it's bad in the sense that it's dangerous. So yeah, Keenan Allen I expect to be involved. I expect him to be a PPR target. I expect him, unfortunately, to hold back some of the production, that we get from Rome Odunze, unfortunately. Ooh, diamond horse armor and a saddle. Thank you very much. So that's something that I'm looking at as, these receivers are not in the immediate term super valuable. They may and hopefully will. Okay, ready? So yeah, Odunze, I think his value goes down with Moore and Allen both out there. I think in general that, DJ Moore is the guy to have in this on this receiver core, and beyond that, I'm holding those guys. I'm not dropping them, but I'm not, right now I don't see them as being great starts in general. Okay, that's bad. Okay, I'm gonna run. Okay, great. So now we're making some progress here. The Rams, man, Matthew Stafford. This is a perfect example of a rising tide lifts all boats. This is a quarterback whose arm and whose skill literally makes all the other players around him fantasy relevant players, regardless of kind of who they are. For what it's worth, the players that are who they are in this situation, not Demarcus Robinson, who I at least thought was that guy up until as recently as a week ago. I think the answer to who it is Jordan Whittington and Tutu Atwell. Whittington seems like the guy who, I read somewhere that he's got like the Cooper Kupp handcuff kind of position. He's doing, he's in the Cooper Kupp type of role. I don't know if that's fully accurate. That's just what I read. I will say that, and that Tutu Atwell is more of the high upside. Wow, this is an extensive one, isn't it? Okay, we see some blazes down that way. Let's go ahead and engage with one or two more of those. They're back the way I came, which probably means that there's a spawner somewhere around here. Oh god, that's bad. Okay, I'm running. That's why you block off that thing. Now you can see why I did all that. Okay, all right. Just sit here, take this guy out, and keep talking about the Rams. So yeah, Whittington, I guess, is the kind of number one guy. Did I get a skull right off the bat? That'd be amazing. Kyron Williams is the guy. Blake Corum is all the way behind Ronnie Rivers. I don't think he's a backup, even as like a stash backup kind of thing. Yeah, so if Blake Corum is still on your team, you should probably drop him for Trey Benson or Ty Chandler or Tank Bigsby. And that's just talking in terms of like better handcuff type running backs. Braylon Allen, Bucky Irving, if they're still out there, obviously would be even more elite choices, I think. Joshua Carty, their kicker. I would not I think he's actually probably a low-key, sneaky good option for your fantasy kicker. For one thing, this team right now feels like a field goal team, not a touchdown team, especially while there's still these injuries. He did miss one kick this week, which was the first kick he's missed all season, I believe. But he did hit a 50-plus yarder as well as whatever other field goals he had this game. I think he can be a real value for your team. This team is at home to the Packers next week. That could be a problem for their offense, but so far they've found ways to get it done against good teams. So, this could be more of the same this week. I'm not specifically worried about this Rams team just because somehow Matthew Stafford and this offense just manages to get it done, every week somehow, at least to the point where there's some value for fantasy. Moving on, the Texans face off with the Jaguars this week, and this is a game that kind of went the general way we thought, which is to say a Texans win. The Jaguars showed some things on offense, but they also showed that they still have some flaws on offense. They seem like they're a decent defense, but it doesn't necessarily mean a lot right now to be a decent defense, just because their team is a bit discombobulated. Just talk about the coach, that if he doesn't get a win this week, that this might be his last game as the coach. I don't know. I don't know how those things work, how quickly teams like to move on from coaches, but I could see that. I mean, they have plenty of talent, but they're still not putting it all together. They got Tank Bigsby and ETN, quote-unquote, rotating. Early game, that was a lot of Bigsby and not a lot of ETN was what that looked like, but I don't know that that's in any way necessarily meaningful. Like, I don't know if that's noisy. You want some of this? Yeah, you do. Yeah, I don't know. I think these Jaguars players are going to be fine. Brian Thomas is really good as a player. He passes the eye test. He seems like somebody who is going to continue to get better and better as a football player. His ceiling may be a little bit capped with this team, but I think he gets a lot of the good opportunities, and he's still absolutely someone you should have and continue to consider starting in fantasy. And Christian Kirk, it feels like, is the other pass catcher there that you want, really. That it's going to be Kirk and Thomas and the tight end, whoever that is. Obviously, probably more so when Ingram's back, but even with Brenton Strange, like, he's definitely the next up guy in the passing game overall. I mean, he's not the only one, but he's the one who feels like he has some fantasy value. Is the tight end after Thomas and Kirk. Apparently, Trevor Lawrence still doesn't look great. But with that said, I mean, there's still room for improvement, I suppose, I think. Oh, these are all dead ends now. Next week, the Colts are coming to Duval to face the Jaguars at home. This might be the week they put it together. I don't know. It seems like, as good a week as any for them to kind of put it together, right? So why not? I don't know. Let's see. We'll see if it happens. Moving on to the Texans. What to say about the Texans? Cam Akers is like he shows you that getting Mixon back is going to be awesome. Mixon's going to be good for this team. The team wants to have a running component of the game, not just be a passing team all the time. And I think that's very much what they could ultimately achieve here. As a team, I think they're good, and if they can be a balanced good, that's the best kind of good for them to be. Nico Collins is a bona fide star. There's no question. People that faded him in the second or third round of drafts because they were worried about how many other pass catchers were on this team. Well, you were wrong. What can I say? He is the man, and he looks like he's going to continue to be one of the most valuable wide receivers in fantasy football. I think Diggs is going to continue to have some value. And, yeah, they are who we thought they were. I think Stroud is still a good quarterback. Next week, they get the Bills at home. I think that Bills defense might cause this team problems. It's certainly not a foregone conclusion that they're going to have the same success that the Ravens had this past week against the Bills. It could be shootout potential too, though. So, there's some good things that could come out of this game. Moving on, the Raiders and the Browns. It slightly beat my expectation based on the little song thing I did. It still wasn't necessarily a big game, but, two uninspiring offenses going at it. That's what you got, which I guess what you were thinking you were going to get. So congratulations on that. No, I don't know what to say about this except that, this was a low-scoring game. Neither of the offenses was particularly great. The Raiders, Gardner Minshew, unimpressive. It is a pass-first team, though, so I think unimpressive as he may be, he continues to support fantasy receivers. Okay, that's where all the blazes are coming from. I see. This is awesome. We have found our way to a wonderful Nether fortress. It took us a while. We got to keep on getting through these games, though, don't we? Zamir White feels absolutely droppable. Alexander Madison feels rosterable, if only because Zamir White is so droppable, which is to say, you don't love this backfield at all, but, at least it looks like maybe Madison has the potential to take more of the work from Zamir White and become a slightly more, I guess, valuable back in the future. You could roster, I think, Madison because of how bad Zamir White is playing, and that's really the best value you can get on that team. They want to pass first, like I said, and I guess they'll use Madison. With Devontae Adams out this past week, we saw Jacoby Myers becomes the number one, but I don't know if that's, outside of when Devontae Adams is out, that you would still ever really want to play Jacoby Myers. Probably not. Brock Bowers had a second kind of low-scoring week in a row. I wouldn't worry. I wouldn't be, panicking. Buy low if the person who has Brock Bowers is panicking, I guess. Trey Tucker emerging as a wide receiver of value here. I don't know if he has much value for fantasy. I think all he really ends up doing is kind of muddling things up for everybody else. Well, and himself too. Muddling things up for everybody, basically. The Browns. You can get smacked up. Jerome Ford has volume value. Deontay Foreman's not doing anything. Getting passing dump off type of plays certainly helps the value of Jerome Ford. He's not somebody I think of as having a ton of value on his own. Nick Chubb's coming back too, so but whatever. You can play him if you need to. You could do a lot worse, I think, and at least until Nick Chubb is fully back up to speed, which might only be literally a week. But I don't know. This wide receiver group is a little freaky. Something's just off with the vibes on Amari Cooper. He's getting open. He's involved. He's still a high level player, but it's just not working out for him. I don't know what's going on there. Jerry Jeudy feels like the most consistent, valuable receiver on this team in a strange, surprising turn of events, I guess. I think he's the most trusted right now. I mean, still Cooper is wide receiver 1, and he's ultimately wide receiver 2. So it's not a situation where I'm racing to pick up Jerry Jeudy. Although if he's on your waivers, I think he's not a terrible player to roster at this point. Oh, okay. Apparently, and I saw this in the highlights too, but from what I read, this was kind of the feelings of people who watched the game. Deshaun Watson actually, for once so far this season, actually had a game where he played really decent, looked decent. This might be... I did go through these, didn't I? Am I going back the way I came? I think I am. So yeah, if Deshaun Watson is playing better and starting to look like he's going to be able to help this team, he just needs skill players around him who can help him as well. Okay, it's not this way. I think this is a dead end. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the Browns. The offensive line is not good for the Browns. So that's also holding them back. And the other thing to say about the Browns, okay, make sure I know the way back. Yes, that's the way back. The other thing to say about the Browns, David Njoku might be sitting out there on your waivers because someone dropped him. That is a thing that's happened in the world of fantasy. you may want to look for Njoku and pick him up. I think he'll have value on this team as one of the top pass catchers when he does come back. I just don't know if that's going to be, like this week or anything like that. Moving on, the Bengals took on the Panthers. Let's start with the Bengals. Zach Moss and Chase Brown kind of split carries, and Chase Brown seemed to have more. Oh god, that's too many. Maybe it's safer because of reasons. Because of only one blaze at a time for whatever reason. Okay, that's a good start. Okay, that's okay. I can fit two. Oop, I got hit. Okay. So yeah, Chase Brown did more with his carries than Zach Moss. I'm not out on Zach Moss, but Brown definitely looked more like electric when. Oh god, there's too many. Okay. I think Brown might be trending into a larger role, but I'm not completely out on Zach Moss by any means here. Obviously, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, elite wide receiver duo. T. Higgins is more of the possession, volume kind of play. Also, T. Higgins is still a potential trade candidate this season, so it may not be a super high, I don't know how high the chances that he gets traded is, but it's definitely worth considering. Oh god, this is super dangerous. It's definitely worth considering that might happen this season, and we shouldn't discount that possibility. I don't think Yoshivas, the third receiver, is going to have enough to have value. And in terms of the tight ends, it seems like there's a little bit of a committee thing going on here. You're not going to get value out of Mike Gesicki. It looks like, if anybody, it's going to be Eric All, the rookie tight end, who seems to be emerging. He got some more snaps this game. I went and actually looked it up because I was thinking, is this for real? Is he really emerging? And yeah, it's absolutely in the realm of possibility. Joe Burrow after the game said, he's a good blocker. He's a jack of all trades. His role is probably going to expand. These are Joe Burrow's kind of words. So yeah, I think Eric All is a sleeper tight end right now to pick up if you're looking to go a little deeper with your, in terms of tight ends on the waivers this week. I think he's absolutely somebody you should consider. Yeah. I think Burrow, I don't know if he's doing enough to be someone I want to start in fantasy. He's not a running QB, obviously, but he does have gifts off script is the best way I can describe it. Like, his abilities off script. He does have legitimate ability when, oh my god, that's too many. That's stupid. That's a stupid amount of blazes. Let's see now then, what else to say? Yeah, I don't know. I think because of Burrow's abilities to scramble and improvise, he's going to keep drives alive. He has some of the value that a running quarterback has in the sense that he's a scrambler. It's just different. The Ravens are visiting the Bengals this coming week, so I guess we'll kind of see what this team is made of, I think. Offensively and defensively, I think we'll see if they're really good enough to get things done against a really good offense. We're hoping that we can get a blaze or two before a million of them spawn. We can actually fight them. Moving on, the Panthers... Andy Dalton can sustain fantasy value for this team. That's that's a real thing. He's really going to sustain value. Deontay Johnson's the biggest winner, of course, but Xavier Legette is the clear wide receiver 2 on this team. At least with Thielen out, he is. He got 10 targets. There's at least 3 more weeks without Thielen, I think, because he's on the IR, I believe. So this is a situation where you absolutely Legette, I think, is a good waiver value this week and might be one of your top, wide receivers to look at on the waivers for this week. Who else? Chuba Hubbard's doing great. He's definitely, I don't know how much Jonathan Brooks coming back is going to really hurt him, but it's absolutely a possibility that, he still has value with Jonathan Brooks back also. He's definitely doing it right now, looking good. Don't forget Miles Sanders is in there too, so it's not as clear-cut as just, that Hubbard and Brooks are going to share. There's still Miles Sanders, and he's still playing. He's still getting snaps. Next week they visit the Bears, so strong defense, so be careful. But, again, you're at this point, I think you're just looking to see, you're starting Deontay Johnson probably a lot, and go, ouch. Yeah, so, Panthers are suddenly viable at the very least, which is awesome. Moving on to the Colts and the Steelers. For the Colts, we got a couple injuries to talk about. Jonathan Taylor, the MVP of the Colts from fantasy's perspective, injured late in this game. I haven't looked up the update yet. I don't think it's considered thought of as long term. So might miss a game or two, might miss 4, might, something more, but I don't think it's considered long term. Again, like I said, Trey Sermon is the backup here. He's probably going to be popular on the waivers. I personally would not be into it. I'm not chasing Trey Sermon. I don't like to chase 1 or 2 week values in fantasy where it's a player. Oh, God, I could still die here, can't I? Where it's a player who, only has value for weeks that the starter's out. I don't see Trey Sermon as a really elite backup either, just in terms of skill. I don't think he's going to, what you really want is an elite backup who's going to get 75-80% of the production that your starter does. So Jordan Mason does that. I think someone like Ty Chandler or even Trey Benson would do that if the starter in front of them were to get hurt. I just don't know if Trey Sermon is that talented of a player. Anthony Richardson got injured too. I believe it's a hip pointer, which I don't know. It's some kind of hip or abdominal type of injury. So Richardson's injury is also considered short term, I believe. It's not something that I think the team is worried will have him out for longer term. While he's out, though, Joe Flacco takes over as the quarterback, and I'll be honest with you, Joe Flacco is considerably more valuable for the fantasy wide receivers, I believe, than Anthony Richardson at this stage of their respective careers and with their skill sets and stuff. Michael Pittman had a few good catches with Richardson, but having Flacco come in, I think, really helped him to have a big game and actually look like he's somebody now that you're excited to start, or at least, willing to start going forward. So good news for those who held on to Pittman after drafting him probably fairly high and having a disappointing season so far. The number 2, or the other receiver to consider in that passing game, is Josh Downs. Had a bunch of targets in this game. He's getting shallower targets. He's probably the guy to roster, though, going forward over Alec Pierce. This team gets the Jaguars next week, so there's a good chance we'll see the offense continue to do its thing, whatever its thing is. We might see that subpar Jaguars team. We might see the Jaguars really come out and get a win, fight hard. So, I mean, whatever. It is what it is. It's a division matchup there. Again, for both of these teams, they have stuff on the line, and they'll probably bring their A game. As for the Steelers, man, Justin Fields is apparently paying the streamer dividend. He may be somebody that you want to start starting weekly now. I don't know if you're quite that brave. I don't know if I'm quite that brave, but I think Fields is a good quarterback on this team. Like, he's decent for fantasy. He looks a lot better. He's certainly more accurate overall. He's not perfect, but he's a lot better than he looked when he played for the Bears. So, go with it. Like, accept that things changed, and Justin Fields has improved as a passer. He's improved as a player, making good decisions. Like, yeah, don't be afraid. I was definitely afraid of the Steelers team, coming into the season. Afraid in the sense of like, yeah, this team, I don't care. I know that they're a team that's going to try to run and win with defense, but I still think they're going to stink. And Justin Fields is getting it done. They're getting enough done kind of overall in the different facets of the game. And so, yeah, trust them. Certainly trust George Pickens. I think he's a stud. He's somebody who is absolutely a fantasy starter, I think. You saw it this game. He's just, there's trust there. There's good vibes. Somehow, some way, this team has found a way to be a decent team, despite not having seemingly a top-level quarterback, but making the most of what they do have. They've success in that all the way, Najee Harris, you can still probably trust as much as I've been out on him and still kind of am. He's plodding, he's plodding along. He's not necessarily beating you with his skill, but he's got the volume. There's no question. If and when Jalen Warren continues to be out, if the injury to Cordero Patterson persists and keeps him out for any games, all those things help Najee. So yeah, you gotta just say, okay, this guy's actually, if not decent, at least fine. Is what you have here. You have fine. And you can do a lot worse in fantasy football than fine. So, and yeah, it's Pickens and Freiermuth. I think those are the two pass catchers. Calvin Austin, not enough volume. Freiermuth seems like he is a legit every week tight end that you can play. Not a super high volume tight end by any means, but somebody who you can probably play every week. Like, don't be afraid of Pat Freiermuth compared to some of the other tight ends out there. He's at least got a role. He's probably going to be the number 2 pass catcher. He's an outlet type of player for a quarterback who, sometimes needs that kind of help, or needs to be able to pass short and keep a passing game that's not reliant on the long ball. So, yeah, I think Fields has looked more on target. Pickens has the ball skills, so he'll throw down the sidelines, and there'll be good throws, and Pickens can snatch throws away from defenders. So yeah, it's not a terrible situation here for those guys, surprisingly. I would roll with those guys. This week they get the Cowboys. I expect the Cowboys to play hard. I think that they're just gonna not fold easily in this game. So I think it'll be a tough one, for the Steelers to get another win. The Steelers team may have started the season hot and then may have a legitimately tough time, going forward, getting more and more wins. But they're certainly not out of this game. The Cowboys are a beatable team here, and I think that the Steelers might surprise us and continue to be a good enough team. Where the hell did I come from? Actually, no. Oh, I see it now. It's down there. That was tricking me. That was the trick. It's down here. Okay, cool. Making my way back. Moving on to the Eagles and the Buccaneers. This Eagles team feels ready for a bye week. I've been trying to figure this team out the last couple of seasons where it's the same. Oh, shit. And I gotcha. Oh, I missed. Okay. Oh, God. There's 2 of them now? Is that what's happening? Or is there just one? Oh, my God. He's so close, though. I think he's going to kill me if I don't get in here. Okay. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. The Eagles. I think they're ready for their bye week. They didn't have 2 of their best receivers. I get it. It feels, though, like they're the kind of team that, like, some weeks they look like absolute top contenders, and other weeks they just look bafflingly mid. And this was a bafflingly mid week. That's what it feels like, at least. I didn't watch the whole game, so I can't say for sure, definitively, that that's what was happening here. But that's what it felt like, for sure. It felt like this was why is this team so mid kind of week? They're mid on defense or on offense or both. And Jalen Hurts kind of tries to do too much in games like that. Plays a little hero ball, and I think he's more turnover prone. I had Jalen Hurts as my quarterback in fantasy last year, and I'm not complaining, but I didn't draft him this year, and it's because I watched a lot of the games last year. I shouldn't say I didn't draft him. I did draft him in one league, but I didn't draft much of him this year because I saw a lot of Eagles games last year, and I saw that while he has a lot of value, he's also a little bit turnover prone. He's not, the perfect guy for some of the kind of, like, you want somebody who is a little safer with the ball, he's good, but he can make some mistakes. It can hurt his team in real world. Saquon, just having Saquon, hopefully takes them a step forward to over where they were last year as an offense, which is to say, they got the receivers and Saquon Barkley. Now they can really, take it to teams basically, and they can control with the run game, which they've been doing, of course, pretty effectively so far. Can I get back there from here? Should I go? No, I should go behind the waterfall. That's the right way to do it. So this was like Saquon not even having a huge game per se, but he's good. He's going to be out there. Hopefully he helps the whole offense, like I said. And I don't know, like the new OC is in there, and I think that they're a good offense, but then sometimes I'm just like, oh, or maybe not. I don't know. It's hard to tell sometimes with this team. Like That's the feeling I get. Obviously, Goddard was the man because the two receivers were out. He's got real rapport. He's got real receiver skills. So even without, even when those receivers are back, I think you still consider Goddard as a pretty high tier, low. He's still a low tight end one, but he's a higher tier of low tight end ones, whatever that means. Yeah, I think you still feel fine starting the main weapons on this offense, including Jalen Hurts. I don't think you're worried about this team in some profound kind of deeper way. Jake Elliott, if he's your kicker, you might be thinking, oh, I got a good kicker. I have news for you, buddy. You can do better, I believe. Boswell, if he's out there, McLaughlin. There's tons of players out there that I think constitute doing better than what's his face, than Jake Elliott. Moving on to the Buccaneers. Mayfield, man, he's great for fantasy sometimes. When it's the thing I said last week was it may be because the Buccaneers, if you recall, had a tough game last week. When a team comes at Mayfield with really good coverage, I think that's his kind of Achilles heel, or this offense's Achilles heel, perhaps. Ouch. You and your enchanted bow. We'll see about that. When he has time to pick apart a defense, when the coverage isn't good enough, and his gunslinging ways can, yield fruit, it's hard to do better than Mayfield for fantasy. I mean, I'd have to look deeper into the differences between the games where he's doing good and the games where he's not, but I think that coverage and his ability to find receivers open quickly and that's what makes the difference. When he can do that, man, can he be good, and can this team be good in general? Evans and Godwin might have their best combined fantasy season since the Brady days. I mean, it just feels like that's another. Those guys really got it going on, and there's not much competition for targets, at least not at the top of the target tree there. Cade Otton, somebody who he might be worth considering as a weekly tight end. I was going to say, considering as a streamer, this is an example where the highlights don't tell the whole story. He shows up in the highlights once or twice, but if you watch, if you look at the targets, he actually had freaking 8 targets? 9 targets, 6 catches? That's a big deal for a tight end. So you might consider Cade Otton. I don't know if he's going to sustain that. Cade Otton seems worth considering. They get the Falcons. They visit the Falcons on Thursday night. I expect a bit of short week suppression of the offense. That's something that happens a lot of times on these Thursday night games is you get this, it's a short week and the offenses have simpler game plans because they have less time to prepare, and you just get a sort of general lowering of suppression of the overall offensive output. Second to last up, the Saints taking on the Falcons. The Saints team, so Derek Carr's come down to earth these last couple weeks. He still feels like he's able to easily support 2 wide receivers. Obviously, those 2 wide receivers being specifically Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave all the way. But that seems like it's real, like his abilities to support those receivers is legit, and that this team is legitimately not a bad team. They're going to not be as great as they looked the first couple weeks, but they're not going to be bad. That's how I would be seeing it based on what we've seen so far. Taysom Hill got all the goal line work, or he got goal line work until he got injured. I don't know the severity of his injury, but if it's he's back next week or whatever kind of thing, or he's only out for 1 week, he's worth consideration as your tight end. I don't even love saying that because there's something about Taysom Hill being the tight end that I just never feel good about. I'm just never a fan of it. So I'm not excited about that, but it is the truth that he has some value there if he's tight end eligible in your leagues. This is a weird choice. It was an accident, but it was also still a weird choice. And then, Olave and Shaheed are the 2 receivers. Shaheed's role has grown. I think he has more floor now than you might think. Both those guys, I think, are highly valuable for the rest of the season. The offense can move the ball, and the defense seems decent, so I'd be buying these players. That's a formula. I'd even be buying the kicker and the defense in general. They go to Kansas City Monday night to play the Chiefs. That's a good defense. I expect both teams to get going offensively in this game, though. Alvin Kamara I didn't even mention because he's so good. He's starting every week. He's one of the best running backs in the league, and he's getting by far the majority of the work. So Jamal Williams or anybody else is not there for you yet. Okay, let's go outside and see back at the village how things are going. Hey, everybody, how's things going back at the village? You guys all still alive out here? The Falcons, Drake London finally stabilizing his value, looking good. I think Darnell Mooney is somebody that you absolutely should roster. You probably should be starting on a regular basis. He really feels like, he gets the valuable targets. Ray McLeod gets more of the short passing game work, but both of those guys have a role and might have some value. Cousins is still not playing good enough to be startable, but he's getting it done for other fantasy players. So that's a start. Kyle Pitts, man. Oh, that's so sad. It's too bad, but the impatient fantasy player in me says you should start thinking about dropping him. I don't know if that's actually a good decision IRL, but it feels like the thing that I want to do. It's the urge I have is to just drop him and just be done with it. Be done with this pain and heartache that we get every week, that we've had season after season, unfortunately, if we've had Kyle Pitts on our fantasy team. Who knows? Hopefully it gets better. Not great news either for Bijan Robinson. He's okay. I mean, it's not anything terrible or, that alters his general value for fantasy, but Tyler Algier, he passes the eye test as a runner. He's at least getting B's on the eye test. And that's good enough to keep him out there. So they're going to be sharing this backfield. He's still going to continue to be involved. So that's capping Bijan's upside. This team did not score offensive touchdowns. They scored defense and special teams touchdowns. At least Younghoe Koo is starting to return some value. He was probably drafted rather than being on your waivers. But if he is on your waivers, he might be someone to look at as a kicker that you might want to grab. And they get the Bucs at home on Thursday. Like I said, with the Bucs, expect suppressed short week type of production. It makes it an especially tough decision for folks who are trying to decide whether to start Kyle Pitts. Oh, it looks like I have really high water pants. Because if Pitts does really bad again, you're going to have to look at that all weekend. And it's like there's so many tight ends that are probably on your waivers in shallower leagues that you might do better than Kyle Pitts with. And it's tough. It's a tough decision. I don't know what to tell you. I don't think I'll be dropping him, but I have a team where I have to rely on him, and I think I do want to wait one more week. And if he just, because it's not just that he doesn't have points, it's that all the things, he's not running a ton of routes. He doesn't pass the eye test like running routes. It's just, it's bad. So if you drop him, I don't blame you. I'm almost there myself. Moving on to the last game of the week, the other Monday night game, which was apparently also a snoozer. I didn't see it. The Titans and the Dolphins. So for the Dolphins, we have Tyler Huntley. Is he keeping the job for another week? Did he do enough? I don't know if they have much of a choice. He didn't do anything great, but, he's still, I don't know. He offers them some rushing upside, I guess. That's the one thing in his favor. I wouldn't play him in fantasy unless you're really desperate. They get the Patriots next week, so I wouldn't be playing him in fantasy. Not ideal for any of these players. I wouldn't even trust the kicker, even though he might have all their points again like this week, but instead of 12 points, he might have like 3 or 6, and that's all their points this week against the Patriots coming up. I'm just guessing here, but for this week at least, what we saw was not great. It was bad news for everyone on this team. Achane didn't get much going. Tyreek Hill didn't have much yardage. Jalen Waddle did a little better than the other guys in terms of yardage, but still didn't do much. Yeah, it's just bad. I mean, expect it next week to maybe be internally better. Like they have more time with Huntley, they have a better, more functioning offense. But I don't know that it's going to be any better for fantasy because I think the Patriots are a good defense and they're going to try to slow the game down, etc. So the Titans, yikes. I don't know if I can say anything good about the Titans either. They did win. They did do more to win the game. Yeah, Calvin Ridley is looking like last year's Calvin Ridley in terms of his utter lack of consistency. He'll have these big weeks that get you excited or have a big week. In this case, this season he had 2 big weeks. But he's also going to have these really low-scoring weeks. Apparently, Will Levis had an injury in this game and was replaced by Mason Rudolph. After the game, the coach said, Levis is 100% our starter when he's healthy, and that the injury doesn't seem to be serious in the long term. So expect more Levis, which frankly I think is better for these, for Hopkins and potentially for Ridley than Mason Rudolph. Who knows? With a full game, Mason Rudolph maybe has value. I don't know, but at least Levis can kind of gunsling these guys into fantasy relevance. There's no Andy Dalton waiting behind Levis to help this team, I don't think, and Mason Rudolph. Tony Pollard is the main guy in the running game, but Tyjae Spears does get valuable work, so there's a share going on there, timeshare. But this week they're going into their bye week, so maybe they can figure stuff out at the quarterback position. Maybe they'll figure some things out in the offense, and I would be, it's a good buy low opportunity because a lot of teams come out of the bye weeks and they make the changes, and it really does make a difference. So whatever that change may be, whether it's a change at quarterback, whether it's a change with the quarterback, don't be surprised if this team comes out week 6 and actually surprises people a little bit. Also, you're going to want to watch week 6 for all these teams on bye closely to see, because a lot of teams install changes in the offense over a bye week. So if you see a player come out the week after a bye and suddenly he's got a bunch of targets and his usage is really promising, that's a good opportunity to go after that player, because it may be that they installed new stuff in the offense and that's now a pattern. I don't know what that looks like for this Titans team. Better looks like slightly not as worse. Oh, sorry for, jeez. But yeah, that's it for that. Good. So, for week 4's waivers, I'll start with the running back position. If Braylon Allen is still out there, you just gotta. Oh, I should have done that better. Let's do this already. Braylon Allen to me would be probably my top pickup. You never know who's out there. The other one is Kareem Hunt. I think that's at the top of everybody's list, just because it's the Chiefs and they have some value there. Players like Rico Dowdle are probably still out there on your waivers. Tank Bigsby, Roshan Johnson. He's getting the goal line work. I don't know that he's going to usurp Swift's role anytime soon, especially with how good Swift actually played this week. But he's worth considering. Emmanuel Wilson for the Packers. Sorry, it's so loud here. Consider the Broncos running backs as well. Particularly, I think, Javonte Williams. Someone might have dropped him, so he might be. Oh, excuse you. Okay, I can't get out. There we go. Okay. So yeah, I would definitely consider that as well if they're out there. If you're looking for a handcuff type of understudy back who's specifically backing up your main guy, then I think you want to look at Benson, Ty Chandler. If the guys I mentioned before that who have some standalone value, Algier would be another one who has standalone value. But you could also look at those guys at the running back. Moving on to wide receiver. I need to get more wheat, don't I? Moving on to wide receiver. I don't know, Xavier Legette is up there for me. He's near the top of the list. So you got Legette, I think. You definitely got Mooney if he's still out there. I think has a lot of value. Look if someone dropped Cortland Sutton. I think Cortland Sutton is going to be worth rostering, and he may start yielding value as soon as this week, just at least in PPR and at least in terms of some volume. Their chemistry is building, and he's a really talented player, Cortland Sutton is. Wan'Dale Robinson, if he's still out there, especially in half or more PPR, which if you're in full PPR, I doubt he's out there, but he might be. Oh, it's so much quieter over here. So Quentin Johnston, I think, is still worth picking up, or Lad McConkey if he was dropped and he's out there. They're going into bye this week though, so you may be able to wait a week to pick up those guys. You may not need to try to go after him this week, but Mike Williams maybe, Michael Wilson certainly, and Josh Downs definitely deserve some consideration there too. Yeah, I mean, Keon Coleman might have gotten dropped by somebody. I think there's some value there to consider. I would not put him at the top of this list, but that's why I named him after like a bunch of other players who I'd put higher on this list. But I think there's a lot of value this week in wide receiver in general, and I do think Keon Coleman is a legitimate stash, so I'm not out on, if Keon Coleman is your guy this week, I don't think that's a bad move. So, yeah, I think that's about all you need for wide receivers. There's more good options than I probably listed, but those are that's a good list to get you started. And yeah, more than enough wide receiver choices on waivers this week. And then moving on to the tight end position. Pat Freiermuth, if he's out there, I think he's at the top of my list. Taysom, depending on the injury status, what we find out about the injury and whether that's going to keep him out. Tyler Conklin, if he's still out there. Tucker Kraft seems like he's somebody with some value there. Cade Otton, as I mentioned in the earlier segment, definitely he got 9 targets in this game, and he might be somebody that has some real value at the tight end. Zach Ertz still, and if you want, speculate a little bit on Eric All for the Bengals. He's somebody who his role will increase. I don't know that he's going to be straight up fantasy viable, but he's definitely not. You could do, if you're looking for sleepers, he's my sleeper of the week, that's for sure, at the tight end position. Quarterback, of course, Sam Darnold may still be out there on the waivers because there's so many non-believers, and it takes us some time sometimes to decide, yep, this is not a fluke, this guy is the real deal, and I think he absolutely is. Obviously as an IRL quarterback for the Vikings, but for fantasy also, I think he's going to be the real deal. So Sam Darnold, if he's out there, would probably be among the top options out there. Fields, if he's out there. I think Rodgers has a lot of value, but not so much this week. This is probably not the ideal week to start Aaron Rodgers, just because he's facing the Vikings and they're traveling to London. So either or both of those factors could certainly work against a big game for the Jets. Caleb Williams is probably out there. I was going to mention him as a streamer. I don't think he's a streamer, but I was going to mention him as a hold. I think he's getting better, but it's happening so slowly that I still can't really endorse picking up Caleb Williams. But I think he will gain value as the season goes on. I'm still not giving up on that Bears team, man. I think that they're going to eventually put the pieces together. My favorite position, the kicker. I'm sure there's good kickers out there on your waivers that are probably better than the kickers you have if you rostered someone like Jake Elliott. I'm just using him as an example. Nothing against Jake Elliott, but oh, cool. Oh, that's the back of my head. Hey, look at the back of my head. Oh, there we go. Chris Boswell for sure. Chase McLaughlin again. Joshua Carty, Will Reichard are the 2 rookie kickers you can look at, or Jake Bates, although you have to wait till after the bye. Cameron Dicker after the bye also. But for now, yeah, Carty, Reichard, Blake Groupie, Cairo Santos is getting a lot of 50-plus yard tries for that Bears team, so keep that in mind. They might be a good kicker situation. If you really need a streamer, you could do Jason Sanders or Jason Myers. I don't like either of them because they don't kick as many long field goals accurately. So that's the reason I choose these other kickers above them. Defense streamers this week, the big ones are probably Seattle going against the Giants, Denver going against the Raiders. You could try the Raiders against Denver, but I like Denver against the Raiders. New England playing the Dolphins, or the Dolphins playing New England. But Denver's at home against the Raiders. They're all at home. Seattle's at home against the Giants. New England's at home against the Dolphins. So those would be 3 top-tier streamers. If you're looking for holdable defenses that might still be out there, I doubt that the Texans are still out there, but they qualify. I doubt that the Packers Packers might still be out there. They don't have the ideal matchup this week, but they feel like a hold longer-term defense. You could go, if you're hard up for a streamer, you might even try the Commanders just to see if all the offensive production they have can translate into a big win over the Browns, where they kind of control the game and get a lot of opportunities, to get turnovers. I'd be looking in general, streaming defenses and streaming kickers is totally fine. I generally think at this point in the season you should be looking for a kicker that you can hold just to save yourself the trouble of having to deal with it every week. Maybe your target is pick up Cameron Dicker after his bye when he gets dropped or whatever, but you want somebody who you can just start every week, not worry about. With defense, if you're already not holding a top defense, you just keep streaming. It's fine. It's perfectly fine. It's sometimes good to grab them for a few weeks, to grab the same defense, hold it for a few weeks. It's occasionally worth it to hold a second defense that has a great matchup the upcoming week and to get ahead of the waivers on stuff like that. If you have a deep enough bench, if you don't have any other spots you need to work with, if there's nobody on the waivers you're super excited about, go ahead and use that spot for a second defense for a week. I don't do it much, but it's worth considering. But overall, feel free to stream those positions, I think. And in tight end this year is feeling like there's so much risk and variability. It's not a position I want to stream every week. I prefer to get somebody I can use multiple weeks, a Zach Ertz or a Ty Conklin. Maybe Kate Otten is one of these in that category, or any of these guys we're talking about here. Freiermuth certainly feels like it. I'd rather have one of those guys that I don't have to stream every single week, because it's hard to just guess every single week. But with that said, I think tight end is a very streamable position this season due to the issues outside of a few top players, deep uncertainty at the position, and the fact that you do have, teams with players like Eric All or Colby Parkinson, and you have these guys that might not be great, and even the guys like Ertz and Conklin and stuff, they may not be great every week, but they're probably, some of them are out there on your waivers in shallower leagues, unless everyone's holding two tight ends and stuff. So, yeah, those are my waivers for the week. I'm gonna just leave it here for now. On Friday, I will be back with another more creatively oriented episode. I'll do some musical parodies and some little poems about the games, all that stuff. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the video, please give it a like. Please comment. I'd love the feedback on what I can do better, what you find useful, what you find less useful. Any feedback would be helpful, even if it's negative feedback, non-toxic, I don't want people just being toxic. Anyway, thank you so much. Please do your best to be kind to yourself and to others, to any and all forms of others that you encounter. Thank you so much. Hope you have a great day. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.